Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Mental Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Mona, your mental gym buddy, and today I'm talking to Jennifer Guzman. She's the founder of Pistola Consulting, and they help businesses with their operations and growth opportunities. And we talk all things how to have a thriving career and a healthy mind. She's going to tell us all of different tools that she uses for her mental health. She talks us through who's sitting on her bench and also introduces us to her spiritual advisor, which I just found so fascinating. So I hope you enjoy.
You are now entering your mental gym. Take one deep breath, stretch your body, and let's get going.
Then let's get this conversation going. I have a lovely guest with me today. Her name is Jennifer, and I'm just going to start off by asking if you could just briefly introduce yourself. Who are you?
Yeah.
Who is Jennifer?
Who is Jennifer? Gosh, well, first of all, I'm a Mexican, almost 42-year-old woman. I am a Chicagoan. I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. I'm a friend. I'm a prospective mother. I'm on an adoption journey, actually. So that's all the front end stuff. But then I also run a practice called Pistola Consulting, which provides interim COO work to businesses. So service optimization, client experience, and team development. I also sit on a number of nonprofit boards here in the city of Chicago, and I consider myself a champion for the underdog.
Amazing. Love it. That was a really good, spot on description, I feel. A lot of things happening in your life. Yeah. And I think today's topic is all about like how to have a thriving career and a healthy mind. And since this podcast is all about just having the tools to really care for your mind, I just want to kind of dig into how your journey, how your career has evolved throughout the years. Like what were some big moments for you where you're like trusting your gut to go in a different direction or
Timely question. And honestly, this is now the second time I've led with like who I am versus what I do first. Because I did a panel last week actually on authentic connections with women leaders in the International Women's Forum. And this woman said, so many of us lead with our title as almost like a cloak, as a defense mechanism to say like, here's what I do versus like, here's who I am. Because for some people, the here's who I am is sometimes painful. And I was like, well, it's not painful for me anymore. So I'm going to lead with who I am. So thank you. And that's why I've been trying to do that. I think of my career in acts, and I am walking into act 3. Or actually I've been in act 3. So act 1 of my career was mostly HR and then evolved into HR leadership in the corporate law space, to the family-owned business space, to the startup space, tech space in Los Angeles. And it was amazing. And it really helped shape and catapult me to the next level. My act 2 of my career was more client experience and employee experience focused. So I helped build and sell an HR outsourcing firm called Empower HR. And I was there for about 8 years. We grew it from 150 clients to 500, all small to middle market businesses. So we were practicing HR, but I wasn't practicing HR anymore. I was mostly accountable for, or I was accountable for growth and then taking care of our portfolio of 500 clients. So understanding what mattered to our book of business, understanding what mattered to their employees, and then building relationship management and customer service around those clients. And it was awesome. And it was enough for the business to sell, which was amazing. And then act 3, which started, call it a year ago now. Well, first and foremost, throughout this whole journey, I've also suffered from endometriosis, which obviously is not talked about as much as it should be, but it is, for those who don't know, a women's health autoimmune disease, which really originates in your reproductive organs. It's scar tissue that adheres to ovaries, uterus, and it can go outside of that region as well. But I've been stage 4 for several years. I've had about 8 to 9 surgeries. And so last January I had, because I lost count, probably either my 9th or 10th, actually, where it was actually supposed to be a hysterectomy, ended up not being a hysterectomy. It ended up being that my right ovary was removed, but they perforated my bowel while they were in because my intestine was adhered to my uterus. And when they detached it, they perforated. And so, I was still at Empower at the time, but we had already sold. The group that acquired us was not someone that was values aligned for me. But I didn't want to leave my team behind. So when this health thing came up, it wasn't planned. It was emergency. It was almost like the universe or God plucked me out of the business because I wasn't moving. So, I was out for a few months on medical leave, obviously. And then, I decided to take care of my mental health and my physical health. I needed to leave. And it wasn't quitting, it was leaving and moving on. And so last year I was going to take off some time in the summer. And then one thing led to another. And a couple people asked me, like, hey, we'd love to pay you to help us build out CX and EX for our firm. And long story short, here we are with Bastola Consulting, leading a great, I don't like titles, but great operational and service consulting firm. And it's been amazing.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing and being so vulnerable also in your story.
Of
Like
course.
that's a whole, yeah. I love how you define it with different acts in your career. And I'm just wondering, as somebody who's kind of like reinventing the next act for herself, what was that kind of in between at some point? I think you kind of say like now it was kind of a health related thing that you were almost forced into. How do you think about the in betweens of the acts?
I've been on a journey with my mental health for, call it, probably about almost 10 years. So I've been working with the same therapist for quite some time. And look, some of these acts didn't come easily, or the in between the acts didn't come easily. And that, I've had to learn multiple times on how to silence the ego and not think I knew it all and take some, punches to the mouth on some of those things and find out the hard way. Because, my career started very young. And so I learned a lot of things early. And I was like, well, because I was so good at this, I have all the answers. Well, you don't. And so really humbling myself is one. Two is I hold people around me, or I keep people around me that hold me accountable. And whether that's your friends, your coaches, your therapist, if people love you and care for you, they're going to give you feedback, obviously in a loving and welcoming and invited, respectful way. But you want people who are going to tell you when you're not on your A game versus someone who's going to let you look bad or let you look like a bad leader or whatever that looks like. Like, what is the brand, your personal brand as a human being? And the people who love and care about you the most are going to share with you when you're not living up to those standards. So that was one. Two is that I just went back to my core and who I was as a kid. Like, what did I love to do? Okay, I loved talking to people. I also loved, pretending to be on the news, like doing those types of things. And so I say this to say, like, over the course of the last 2.5 acts, 3 acts, whatever we want to call it, I ended up figuring out the things that I loved the most. And I'm electing to do the things I love the most and not focusing on the things I don't love. And then I'm building a team around me of the people who can do the things I don't love really well.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think if we can just dig into the team around you that you've assembled, because that seems to be like a huge part in just accountability, but then also being, finding out what works for you. What are some of the people that have been crucial for you?
Yeah, great question. So one, I call it my team, my bench. So that's my personal mental health team, call it, or my spirit team. So, I've been with my same therapist for 9 years ish. And when I thought about having a therapist, I wanted someone who, again, was going to hold me accountable. A lot of therapists are like, okay, yeah, I'm very kind and sweet and all those things. But I'm like, no, I want somebody to tell me when I'm wrong. Like, don't just have me come and dump all the things that I'm upset about and then be like, oh, I'm sorry that happened. Leave it here. I want them to be like, no, actually, you were wrong in this case. Again, it's accountability. And sometimes I think we gravitate, especially when we're looking for healthcare professionals, whether it's mental, physical, whatever, someone we relate to, which sometimes is good, but it also doesn't give you additional perspective. So, Monica and I relate, but we're not 100% the same. So that was one. My coach, Julie, I actually met, she has a strategic planning practice. I met her while I was at Empower. And she's everything that I'm not. I'm a vision and execution person, and Julie's a builder and a structure person. So she helps me understand that middle piece. So again, it's
Mhm.
someone that complements you, doesn't mirror you necessarily. And then lastly, the third person on my bench who I see on a quarterly basis is my spiritual advisor, Delphina, who has been incredible. And I've been with her probably about 4 years. I see her on a quarterly basis. And I mean, she's a spiritual coach and advisor. She's also a medium, for lack of a better term. And so a lot of it is messages that she's channeling from my ancestors, specifically my grandparents that have all passed on. But really, what Delphina does for me is remind me of the tools that I already have and my intuition and following my gut and really finding my light and my magic. And she kind of puts the bow on all the other work. I had a really tough childhood. My mom left at a very young age. I was 9, and I was raised by my dad, who was very old school Mexican, but I also had my old school Jewish grandparents down the block. So very different and old school in a lot of ways. But those stories, the more I got comfortable with sharing my hardships, the easier it became to lead for me and be vulnerable with other people and set the example, especially for younger women or other women, not just necessarily younger, that are struggling. So we talked at the beginning about we lead with what we do versus who we are because it's easier sometimes. And so as much as I can share the tools, the tricks, the hardships, the playbook, I can't replicate the experience for someone, but I can sure as hell show them the path to get there.
That's a very strong bench. It's like, and how do you think they relate to each other? And how do you think, because sometimes it almost feels like therapy and coach similar, and then medium is like something else again. So how do you find the balance within them? And do they sometimes clash with their advice, or is it very balanced for you? I don't know.
Interesting question. Because this just happened last week. My coach and therapist, for the most part, are usually aligned. And obviously, they don't know each other. They're never in session with me together, but they're pretty aligned. Delphine, now this my spirit coach and my therapist clash sometimes. And for example, last week, I haven't spoken to my mother in probably 12 years, something to that effect. So she left when I was 9, but we've never really had a real relationship. And as I've been on this healing journey, I've been feeling like she's this last thing that I need to heal, not necessarily have a relationship with her, but this last wound that needs to be healed. And my therapist was like, you don't owe her any forgiveness. Like, you don't need to do this. This is a boundary. She's not a good person, blah, blah, blah. Then I saw Delphina the next day for our quarterly, and she's like, you're on this great track and things are blossoming for you. And she's like, but you got one thing left. You know that, right? And I go, yeah, I know. And she goes, you know what it is, right? And I'm like, yep, I know. And I just broke down in tears. And she's like, it's not about forgiving her for you, or excuse me, for her. It's releasing her and forgiving her for yourself. And so that's a prime example of where they differ. And on this one, I think I'm going to do a combo. I'm not going to sit with her in person necessarily, but whether that's like talking to a picture of her or writing a letter, I am going to say all the things I need to say to her. It just may not be actually to her. So I kind of blended the two of them on this one.
That is a major journey that you're going through. Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you can find the balance between them, that's also wonderful. If you see like both sides and you're like, okay, what actually works for me, and still have like that trusting your, I mean, they're coaching you, right? So, or like helping you. So it's still that your voice that matters.
Right.
How did you find that voice within you to be like, okay, I have all these people talking around me, but how do you go within and are like, okay, this is what's right for me?
I've gotten to a place where I don't need them to give me the answers anymore. I usually have them. Um, it's just a validation at this
Mm.
point from them. And so I'm learning to trust myself. And so the bench is great, but building this relationship with yourself and being able to trust yourself, love yourself, is so critically important. And I think, as many women do, especially in high visibility careers, you question your worth a lot. And that's one thing that I'm not saying I'm 100% at it, because I think that there's always room to practice and grow, but there's definitely um that has gotten easier, is the self-worth piece for me, which means I should trust myself because I know I'm worth it. Yep.
Yourself in that way more. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm going through right now is she was like being brought up with a certain expectation of like, yeah, what your career is going to look like. And then experiencing that career and suddenly being like, oh no, this doesn't work for me. It doesn't feel right. And then it's taken a while from going like, oh, this doesn't feel right to actually being like, okay, but then what does feel right? And it's taken a lot of trial and error and trying out different things and seeing what I actually enjoy.
Yeah.
So it's been a journey too. But I think I just got to ask a little bit about this spiritual advisor just because that concept is very new to me.
Yeah.
Like, so you go there quarterly and it's just kind of you said, for lack of a better word, she's also a medium, just giving you kind of the ancestral perspective too, or?
Yes, exactly. So, it's energy work, but she's an intuitive, but she's also teaching you how to use your own intuition. And she connects spiritually. And usually it's both of my grandmothers, Bess and Bartola, who actually who my business is named after. Bess and Bartola together is
Um,
Pistola. It's usually them who comes through. Um, I've never heard from my grandfathers, which doesn't surprise me though, because those two women were very powerful, and the men were kind of like the sweet, like lovey-dovey, just quiet guys. So it doesn't surprise me that they're like, get out of the way, we're gonna talk to her.
mm,
One time my dad's brother came through, who's passed away, my Uncle Juan, to warn me about like my dad's health. So he's come through, but otherwise it's usually them. And they're just like, they're my cheer squad. And Delphina's ability to connect with them and give me the messages, like, we just had a session last week and we were talking about this next phase of, not necessarily in Act 4, but Act 3 is evolving a bit. And my worlds are kind of coming together. A lot of my nonprofit community work is coming together with my client experience leadership, my HR leadership all together. And I'm going to be working with a crew of people here in Chicago to build out making voting cool again and some additional political work, which is really different for me. But both grandmas, especially my grandmother Bess, who was a leader in Chicago. My grandmother Bartol I never met. She lived in rural Mexico and then died before I was born. But Bess was like, this is on brand for you, like came through, even to the point where I had said, hey, this is something I can maybe make my own ticket on or write my own ticket on. And Delphina was like, what's the number you would want to make? And she was like, she writes down on a pad of paper what she's hearing.
mm-hmm.
And she'd stop writing. She's like, what is it that you want? And I gave her the number and she flips the paper around and it's exactly the number. And I'm like, all right. So, I mean, it's mind blowing, but what I'm realizing the more I go along this journey is, again, I had all these answers. They are just validating. So many times I'm like, this is going to happen and this is going to happen. And then it does. And I'm like, I knew it. And so to your point, like trusting your gut, and literally it's a physical feeling oftentimes. Like if you're feeling light and airy and excited about something, like whatever type of work you're doing or who you're communicating with, like trust that. And if you go to like a networking event or you're doing a pod or having a coffee with someone and the vibes are off, trust that the vibes are off. And I think I'm starting to use my own intuition more that way. And I'm saying no to things that I know don't feel right. And I'm saying hell yes to things that do feel right.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, and it takes work to, or like it takes practice also to get that sense back, because at some point I felt very stuck, and now I'm like rediscovering this, trusting my gut, and it feels very, very good. So to anybody listening, it's like it's a good feeling once you do get that sense of intuition back, or just following the little crumbs that you can find. Yeah, exactly, like you say, if you meet a person that you're like, oh yeah, this feels good, trust that, and go for that path for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I feel like you have like a wonderful toolbox that really help you with your mental health, and you've assembled the team. Are there any other tips that you would give to somebody a little bit earlier in their career where it's like, okay, yeah, I wish I had done this earlier, I wish I had implemented that? Anything else that we haven't touched on yet?
Yes, and this one is the most important one besides your self-worth. You are only as good as the 5 people you surround yourself with, period. If you want to win, if you want to grow, if you want to accomplish a lot, if you want to be a good human, you got to look at the people around you. Are your friends, your girls, your guys, whatever, but your homegirls, like whether it's 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever that looks like, are they also holding you to the standard that you set for yourself? Do they make you feel good? Are they mean girls? Like, look, I will tell you, I learned the hard way, even recently, and I'm like in my early 40s already. If someone is, am I allowed to say a swear word on this?
Go for it.
If someone is shit talking other friends, not other people, but like other friends in front of you, I can guarantee you they are shit talking you when you are not in the room. And so watching the women around, and ladies, it's tacky. There's enough to go around for everyone. We don't have to compete. Leave the competing to the men. Like, we should all be lifting each other up. And so the one tip that I've learned and continue to learn now is the higher you climb, the lighter the pack has got to be. And so if you surround yourself with even 2 or 3 close besties, whatever that looks like, don't think, oh my God, I don't have a lot of friends. Like, no. That's just the right amount of friends. So always evaluating who you're surrounding yourself with is absolutely critical.
Wow. Yeah, I couldn't have said that better, but it's so, so true. And just like the 5 people, it is shown, it is an arbitrary number, but I think even if you just find 2, 3 people along the way that, hold you accountable, that's so powerful. That's an extremely, extremely good tool to take up in the tool set for sure. Yeah. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. I think we're already at the end. Where can people find you if they want to reach out, follow you on social?
Well, thank you. On social, Twitter is at Jenny Gooz, but spelled JENNYGOOZ. On Instagram, it's Bestola Consulting, BESTOLA Consulting. And then obviously on LinkedIn and all those things.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'll link them in the show notes too, so people can follow you and cheer for you too. But thank you so much for being so vulnerable and sharing your story. It was really insightful and a lot of additional tools for career, but also much beyond that, I feel. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
That's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. And if you enjoyed that and want to share the advice with a friend, please go ahead and share the episode. Also, please rate the show on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or YouTube. It would really help with kind of the search algorithm for this show. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye.